Jake Morrison stood in the center of Kepler Station's main hall and watched the last evacuation shuttle disappear into space. The small craft looked like a bright dot against the black sky before it jumped to hyperspace. He was alone now, exactly where he wanted to be. The station's walls shook as alien ships moved closer. Jake could hear their engines through the metal floors. The Zephyrian Empire had sent their biggest fleet yet. 200,000 warriors, maybe more. All of them coming for him. Jake checked his armor systems one more time. The power cells showed full charge. His weapons were loaded and ready. The heavy plates on his chest and arms bore deep scars from previous battles. 96 direct hits from Zephyrian plasma rifles. Each mark told a story of a fight he had won, and an enemy who had learned too late that humans don't break easily. He walked to the main window and looked out at the approaching fleet. Hundreds of dark ships filled the space around the station. Their weapon ports glowed with deadly energy. Jake had seen fleets like this before. Most people would run. Most people would surrender. Jake Morrison was not most people. The comm system crackled to life. A deep alien voice spoke in broken human language. Human warrior Jake Morrison, this is General Vex Tar of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. You are surrounded and alone. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick. Jake smiled and activated his own comm. His voice was calm and steady. General, I've got a question for you. See this armor I'm wearing? It took 96 hits to dent it. Want to see what happens? On the 97th, silence filled the comm channel. Jake could almost hear the alien general thinking. Good. Let them think. Thinking led to fear, and fear led to mistakes. The first wave of alien dropships began their descent. Jake counted 12 vessels, each carrying 50 Zephyrian shock troops. 600 elite warriors in the first assault alone. They would land in the station's docking bays and fight their way to him, level by level. Jake had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Every corridor in the station was now a trap. Every room was set up for an ambush. The aliens thought they were hunting him, but Jake knew better. He was the hunter here. The first explosions echoed through the station as the alien ships forced their way through the outer airlocks. Jake could track their progress on his tactical display. 3 groups coming from different directions. They were trying to surround him, cut off his escape routes. That was smart tactical thinking, but it had one major flaw. Jake Morrison never ran away. Heavy footsteps echoed from the eastern corridor. The first group had reached the main level faster than expected. Jake moved away from the window and took position behind a support beam. His rifle was already in his hands. The familiar weight comforting and deadly. The first Zephyrian warrior came around the corner, low and fast. These aliens were tall and strong, with thick gray skin that could stop most small arms fire. Their armor was advanced, powered by energy cells that made them faster and stronger. But they had never fought Jake Morrison before. Jake's first shot took the alien in the center of his chest plate. The warrior stumbled, but didn't fall. Good armor, just like the intelligence report said. Jake's second and third shots hit the same spot. The alien's armor cracked and the warrior went down hard. More footsteps. More aliens. Jake moved to his second position as plasma bolts filled the air where he had been standing. The energy weapons left glowing holes in the metal walls, but Jake was already gone. The Zephyrians advanced into the main hall, their weapons ready. They spread out in a classic search pattern, covering each other's backs. Professional soldiers, well-trained and disciplined. Under normal circumstances, they would be dangerous opponents. These were not normal circumstances. Jake triggered the first trap. Explosive charges hidden in the ceiling brought down a section of heavy beamwork. 3 aliens disappeared under tons of twisted metal. The survivors turned toward the sound, and Jake put rifle rounds into 2 more before moving. Again, target is mobile and using station infrastructure as weapons. He heard one alien report over their comm channel. Jake had learned their language years ago. Know your enemy, his old drill sergeant used to say. Know how they think and what they fear. The second wave was already landing in the other docking bays. More footsteps, more voices in the corridors. Jake smiled grimly and checked his ammunition count. He had enough bullets for maybe 50 aliens if he made every shot count. Against 600, those were not good odds. For most people, Jake Morrison was not most people. He had held impossible positions before. He had turned defeats into victories through pure stubborn refusal to lose. The aliens could bring their armies and their advanced weapons. They could surround him and cut off his retreat. They could hit his armor another 96 times if they wanted, but they would learn the same lesson that every other enemy had learned. Humans don't break. Humans don't surrender. And humans like Jake Morrison don't know how to lose. The station shook again as more alien ships docked. Hundreds more warriors were pouring into the lower levels. Jake could hear them coordinating their attack, planning their assault routes, dividing up the station into sectors. Let them plan. Let them think they had him trapped. Jake Morrison had been trapped before, surrounded before, outnumbered before. The aliens would soon learn what every other species in the galaxy already knew. When you corner a human, you don't get a prisoner. You get a very dangerous animal with nothing left to lose. Jake checked his armor one more time and moved toward the sound of alien voices. It was time to show the Zephyrian Empire why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most feared warriors. General Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his warriors enter Kepler Station. The first reports were coming in from the assault teams. One human, alone, armed with primitive kinetic weapons and wearing damaged armor. It should have been simple, but Vexstar had fought humans before. He knew better than to think anything involving them was simple. "Sir, first contact with the target," his communications officer reported. "Squad 7 has engaged. 3 casualties so far." 3 casualties from one human. Vexstar was not surprised. He opened his personal files and reviewed what he knew about Jake Morrison. The human had first appeared in Zephyrian intelligence reports 7 years ago, after the Battle of Titan's Gate. A single human soldier had held a strategic position for 18 hours against an entire battalion. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Morrison sitting in a pile of alien bodies, calmly eating a meal from a ration pack. The reports got worse from there. Morrison at the siege of New Geneva, where he had somehow turned a Zephyrian victory into a crushing defeat. Morrison at the defense of the outer colonies, where he had single-handedly destroyed 3 battlecruisers with nothing but a damaged fighter craft, and what the humans called attitude. "Sir, Squad 12 is requesting backup," another officer called out. "They've encountered heavy resistance on level 5. Heavy resistance from one human. Vexstar had commanded fleets against entire human worlds. He had seen what these creatures could do when they were angry. They didn't fight like other species. Other races fought for territory, for resources, for political gain. Humans fought like the universe owed them something personal. He remembered the first time he had encountered human tactics. The Battle of Proxima Station, 15 years ago. The humans had been outnumbered 20 to 1. Any reasonable species would have surrendered. Instead, the humans had rigged their own station to explode, taking out half the Zephyrian fleet and turning what should have been an easy victory into a disaster. That was when Vexstar first understood the human concept of Pyrrhic victory. The humans would rather destroy everything than let their enemies win. They would sacrifice their own lives, their own ships, their own cities, if it meant taking their opponents with them. "General, we're receiving a transmission from Commander Morrison," his communications officer announced. Vexstar activated the channel. The human's voice was steady and calm, like he was discussing the weather instead of fighting for his life against impossible odds. "General Vexstar, I've got an update for you. That's 27 of your boys down so far. How many more do you want to lose before you realize this isn't going to end well for you?" 27 casualties from one human in less than an hour. Vexstar felt his stomach tighten. He had brought 200,000 of the Empire's finest warriors to kill one man. At this rate, Morrison might actually make it expensive. "Sir, should we respond?" his officer asked. Vex single quotes Tar thought about it. In his experience, talking to humans during combat was a mistake. They used words like weapons, turning conversations into psychological warfare. But curiosity got the better of him. "Human Morrison," he said into the comm, "you are alone and outnumbered. Why do you not surrender? Your death is certain." Morrison's laughter came through the speakers. It was not the laugh of a desperate man. It was the laugh of someone enjoying himself. "General, let me tell you a story. 3 years ago, your people attacked a human colony called New Hope, civilian target, mostly farmers and their families. You killed about 3,000 innocent people." Vexstar remembered New Hope. It had been a standard pacification mission. Nothing special about it. "One of those farmers," Morrison continued, "was a man named Bill Carter. Nice guy. Grew corn and raised cattle. Had a wife named Sue and 2 kids. Your soldiers killed Bill's family right in front of him before they shot him too. War has casualties." Vexstar replied, "This is known." "Here's the thing, General," Morrison said. His voice had gotten quieter, but somehow more dangerous. "Bill Carter was my neighbor when I was growing up. He taught me how to fix a tractor engine. His wife Sue made the best apple pie in 3 systems. Their kids used to play with my sister's kids." Vexstar was beginning to understand where this conversation was going. "So when I heard what happened to the Carter family," Morrison continued, "I volunteered for every single anti-Zephyrian mission I could find. And do you know what I discovered, General? I'm really, really good at killing your people." The comm channel went silent. Vexstar stared at his tactical display, watching the casualty reports pile up. 34 now. 41. 53. One human was carving through his elite forces like they were untrained recruits. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "perhaps we should consider orbital bombardment. Level the entire station." Vexstar considered it. It would be simple and effective, but it would also look like weakness. The Empire had sent its greatest general and its finest fight to kill one human. If that human forced them to destroy an entire station just to stop him, what would that say about Zephyrian military power? "No," Vexstar said. "We finish this properly." But even as he gave the order, Vexstar was remembering other battles, other human opponents. There was something about these creatures that didn't make sense. They were physically weaker than most species. Their technology was often primitive. Their weapons were sometimes hundreds of years old, but they won, again and again, against impossible odds. Humans found ways to win. Or if they couldn't win, they made sure their enemies paid such a terrible price for victory that it felt like defeat. Vexstar pulled up Morrison's service record again. The human had been in continuous combat for 15 years. 15 years of fighting, and he had never retreated from a battlefield, never surrendered, never asked for quarter or mercy. "Sir, the casualty count is now at 68, his officer reported. 68 of the Empire's finest warriors, dead or wounded by one human with a damaged rifle and a suit of scarred armor. Vexstar was beginning to remember why the Zephyrian High Command had classified humans as unacceptably dangerous after their first encounters. These creatures didn't just fight wars. They took them personally. Every battle was revenge for something. Every enemy was someone who had wronged them or their families or their friends. And Jake Morrison had a lot of friends to avenge. The general opened a secure channel to his flagship's tactical computer and began reviewing human combat footage from the last decade. Hours of videos showing impossible victories, last-minute reversals, and humans doing things that should have been impossible. By the time he finished watching, the casualty count had reached 96. Jake Morrison moved through Kepler Station like death itself. He knew every corridor, every ventilation shaft, every maintenance tunnel. The aliens were learning that fighting a human on his home ground was very different from fighting them in open space. The Zephyrians had numbers and superior weapons, but Jake had something more valuable. He had spent 3 weeks turning this station into a maze of death. Every room was a trap waiting to spring. Every doorway could hide an ambush. The aliens were walking through a carefully designed killing ground, and they didn't even know it. Jake crouched behind a fallen support beam and watched a squad of 6 Zephyrians move down the main corridor. They were being careful, checking corners and covering each other properly. Good soldiers. Under normal circumstances, they might even be dangerous. Jake triggered the trap he had set in the floor panels. High explosive charges hidden beneath. The metal decking detonated in sequence, turning the corridor into a storm of flying metal. When the smoke cleared, 4 aliens were down, and the other 2 were wounded. Before they could call for help, Jake put rifle rounds into both survivors. Stationed to Katie, he whispered into his comm unit. Lieutenant Katie Sullivan's voice crackled back from somewhere in deep space. "Go ahead, Jake. Status report." "Having fun so far," Jake replied, moving to his next position. "These Zephyrians are trying to be smart about it. Advancing in small groups, covering each other, using proper tactics. Too bad for them. I don't fight fair." Katie's laugh was warm despite the danger. She was monitoring the battle from a human stealth ship 3 light years away, feeding Jake intelligence and coordinating what might possibly be a rescue mission, though they both knew rescue was unlikely at this point. "Jake, I'm showing massive troop movements on all levels. They're trying to surround your position." "Let them come," Jake said, checking his ammunition. He was down to about 60% of his original load. Against normal odds, that would be a problem. Against Zephyrians, it just meant he had to make his shots count. Heavy footsteps echoed from the eastern approach. Jake had rigged that corridor with something special. A section of the outer hall had been weakened and connected to explosive bolts. When the right amount of weight crossed the pressure plate he had installed, the bolts would blow and that section of corridor would decompress into space. The footsteps got louder. Jake counted them silently. 8, maybe 10 aliens moving in. Formation. Just about the right number. The explosion was satisfying. Jake felt the station shake as atmosphere vented into space and a section of wall disappeared. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut automatically, but not before the corridor filled with floating alien bodies. "Make that 10 more," Jake reported to Katie. "Jake, you can't keep this up forever," Katie said quietly. "Even you have limits," Jake smiled grimly. "Katie, do me a favor. Pull up my service record. How many times has someone told me I couldn't do something?" "Point taken," she admitted. "But Jake, there are still thousands of them left." Thousands. Jake had killed maybe 100 so far. The odds were still completely impossible. But Jake Morrison had made a career out of doing impossible things. The next attack came from 3 directions at once. The aliens had learned from their mistakes and were trying to overwhelm him with multiple assault groups. Smart thinking, but Jake had prepared for that too. He triggered the charges he had placed in the main power conduits. Half the lights in the station went out, plunging large sections into darkness. The aliens' advanced armor had night vision, but it took time to adjust. In those few seconds of confusion, Jake moved. His rifle barked 6 times in the darkness. 6 aliens went down before they could adapt to the changed conditions. Jake rolled behind cover as return fire lit up his previous position. Plasma bolts scorched the air where he had been. The aliens were getting frustrated, firing at shadows and empty corridors. Fear was starting to set in. Jake could hear it in their voices as they called out tactical information to each other. "Target is using station systems against us," one alien reported over their comm channel. "Confirmed. Target has extensive knowledge of station layout," another added. Jake grinned. Extensive knowledge was putting it mildly. He had spent the last month memorizing every bolt and rivet in this place. He knew which walls would collapse if you hit them right. He knew which sections could be sealed off or vented to space. He knew where every weapon, every tool, every potentially useful piece of equipment was stored. The aliens were fighting him on a battlefield he had designed, specifically to kill them. A new voice came over the alien comm channel. "General Vexstar himself. All units, this is command. Target is using prepared positions and station modifications. Adapt your tactics accordingly." Jake keyed his own comm to the alien frequency. "General, you sound worried. Something wrong?" Silence on the channel for a moment. Then Vexstar's voice, carefully controlled. "Human Morrison, you have fought well, but this cannot continue. You are one against thousands." "General, let me ask you something," Jake replied, moving to his next prepared position. "How many of your people do you think you're going to lose before you finally put me down? 100? 500? 1,000? Whatever the cost, you will." "Be stopped," Vexstar said. "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But here's what I want you to think about while your boys are dying down here. Every single one of them has a family back home. Parents, mates, children, and they're all going to die because you decided to pick a fight with humanity." Jake could hear the anger in the general's voice when he replied, "You are one human. We are an empire of billions." "That's right," Jake said cheerfully. "One human is doing this to your empire of billions. What do you think 1,000,000 humans could do?" The comm channel went quiet. Jake had planted the seed he wanted. Fear, doubt, the knowledge that humans were not like other species. Other races fought until the odds were against them, then they retreated or surrendered. Humans fought until they won, or until there was nothing left to fight with. More footsteps in the corridors. The next wave was coming. Jake checked his weapons and his remaining explosives. He was running low on both, but he still had the most. Important thing, he still had his reputation. And in this galaxy, the reputation of a human warrior was worth more than any weapon ever built. Jake Morrison settled into his next ambush position and waited. The aliens would keep coming, and he would keep killing them until one side or the other ran out of bodies to throw at the problem. He was betting it wouldn't be him. Jake's ammunition counter showed red. 23 rounds left in his rifle. 57 rounds for his sidearm. Against several thousand aliens, those numbers were not encouraging. But Jake Morrison had been in worse situations before. The aliens were learning. They were no longer rushing blindly into his traps. Instead, they were methodically clearing each section of the station, using demolition charges to destroy his prepared positions and forcing him to fight in the open. Jake crouched behind an overturned cargo container and listened to the footsteps getting closer. A full squad this time, maybe more. They were being careful, taking their time, checking every corner. Professional soldiers adapting to a dangerous enemy. Too bad for them that Jake Morrison was very good at adapting too. he had retrieved weapons from the dead aliens. Zephyrian plasma rifles were powerful but complex. Jake had spent the last hour figuring out how they worked. The energy cells were good for about 40 shots each, and he had collected 6 of them from fallen enemies. First alien came around the corner low and fast, exactly like Jake expected. The plasma bolt took the warrior center mass, burning through armor and flesh. The alien went down hard. Return fire came immediately. 3 more aliens advancing in formation, their weapons tracking toward Jake's position. But he was already moving, using the cargo containers as mobile cover, firing the alien weapons with deadly accuracy. Humans were natural tool users. Give a human any weapon, any piece of equipment, any random object that could possibly be dangerous, and they would figure out how to kill someone with it. Jake had been doing exactly that for his entire military career. The plasma rifle overheated. After the 6th shot, Jake dropped it and pulled another one from his collection. The aliens were shouting to each other in their own language, trying to coordinate their response to his mobility. They were used to fighting enemies who stayed in one place and traded shots. Jake Morrison did not stay in one place. He rolled behind another container as plasma bolts scorched the air above him. The aliens were getting frustrated. He could hear it in their voices. Fear and anger were starting to replace their military discipline. "Katie," Jake whispered into his comm unit, "how's that rescue mission coming?" "Still 12 hours out," Katie replied from deep space. "Jake, your biosigns are showing fatigue and minor injuries. How are you holding up?" Jake checked his armors. Damage display. The power cells were down to 60%. The impact plates on his chest and arms showed stress fractures from multiple hits. 96 direct hits from alien weapons, just like he had told General Vextar. Each one had been absorbed by the armor's advanced systems, but the damage was cumulative. "I'm fine," Jake lied. The truth was that his left arm was probably broken, and he had taken shrapnel in 3 places. But pain was just information, and Jake Morrison had learned to ignore information that wasn't immediately useful. More aliens were moving through the station. Jake could track them on his tactical display. They had given up trying to surround him and were now advancing in one massive group. Overwhelming force applied to a single point. Smart tactics that should have worked against any normal opponent. Jake Morrison was not any normal opponent. He triggered his last major trap. The station's artificial gravity generator had been rigged with explosive charges. When Jake activated the detonator, gravity failed throughout half the station. Suddenly, every alien who wasn't tied down was floating helplessly in 0 gravity. Humans had been living and working in space for centuries. 0 gravity was natural to them. The aliens, evolved on high-gravity worlds, were completely out of their element. They spun helplessly through the corridors, unable to control their movement or aim their weapons properly, pushed off from a wall, and glided through the weightless environment like he was born to it. His remaining plasma rifle fired again and again, picking off aliens who couldn't dodge or take cover in the 0 gravity field. When gravity came back online 30 seconds later, Jake had killed another 15 enemies and collected more weapons from the floating bodies. "Target has disabled station gravity systems," he heard an alien report over their comm channel. "Casualties are mounting. Request immediate support." General Vextar's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "All units, converge on target. Location: use demolition charges to destroy cover. Force him into the open." Jake smiled grimly. The general was getting desperate. That was good. Desperate enemies made mistakes, and Jake Morrison was very good at taking advantage of mistakes. The next wave came with heavy weapons. Rocket launchers and particle cannons that could punch through the station's hull. The aliens were no longer trying to capture the station intact. They just wanted Jake Morrison dead, regardless of the cost. Jake moved deeper into the station's core levels, where the main fusion reactor provided power for the entire facility. The aliens followed, their heavy weapons tearing apart bulkheads and support structures in their eagerness to get a clear shot at him. That was exactly what Jake wanted. He reached the reactor control room and sealed the blast doors behind him. The aliens would cut through them eventually, but Jake needed a few minutes to prepare his final surprise. The station's fusion reactor was a massive piece of technology that could power a small city. It was also, with the right modifications, an incredibly destructive weapon. Jake had spent years learning how human technology worked, and fusion reactors were something every soldier learned about in basic training, not how to use them for power generation, how to make them explode. "Katie," Jake said into his comm unit, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. In about 10 minutes, Kepler Station is going to experience a small technical malfunction." "Jake, what are you planning?" Katie's voice was sharp with concern. "Nothing too dramatic," Jake replied, working at the reactor control console. "Just a little electromagnetic pulse. Should disable every piece of Zephyrian technology in the system. Jake, if you overload that reactor, it could kill you too." "Maybe," Jake admitted, "but probably not. Human technology is built to survive electromagnetic pulses. Alien technology usually isn't." The blast doors behind him began to glow as the aliens cut through them with plasma torches. Jake finished his modifications to the reactor control systems and stepped back. "General Vextar," he called over the alien comm channel. "I've got that. Answer to your question now." "What question, human?" Vextar's voice was filled with hatred. "You asked me what happens on the 97th hit," Jake said, watching the blast doors begin to buckle. "Well, General, you're about to find out." Jake activated the reactor overload and smiled. In 60 seconds, every alien ship and weapon in the system would be dead in space. After that, it would just be Jake Morrison and a few thousand very angry aliens with no technology to help them, just the way he liked it. The electromagnetic pulse hit like the wrath of an angry god. Every piece of Zephyrian technology within 3 light years simply stopped working. Ship computers died. Weapons went silent. Life support systems shut down. Even the aliens advanced. Armor became nothing more than heavy metal suits. Jake Morrison felt the pulse wash over him like a warm wave. His armor flickered for a moment, then came back online. Human military equipment was hardened against electromagnetic interference. It had to be, because humans had a tendency to use nuclear weapons in their own backyard. The blast doors in front of him went dark as the alien cutting torches died. Jake could hear confused voices on the other side, speaking rapidly in their own language. Panic was setting in as they realized their technology had failed. Jake picked up his rifle and checked. The power cell, still functional. He had 6 more alien plasma weapons collected from the dead, and now he was facing enemies who could no longer shoot back. The odds had just shifted dramatically in his favor. He opened the blast doors manually and stepped out into the corridor. 20 aliens stood there in the darkness, their weapons dead in their hands, their armor no longer providing the enhanced strength and speed they were used to. They looked at Jake with something approaching terror. "Gentlemen," Jake said politely, "I believe you were looking for me." The first alien charged with a combat knife. Jake shot him with the plasma rifle. The second alien tried to run. Jake shot him too. The rest stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Jake Morrison had just turned a high-tech battle into a primitive fight. And primitive fights were something humans had been winning for 50,000 years. "Katie," Jake called over his comm unit as he walked through the disabled aliens. "Station is secure. Repeat, station is secure." "Jake, what the hell did you do?" Katie's voice was filled with amazement. I'm reading massive system failures across the entire Zephyrian fleet. Just leveled the playing field a little, Jake replied. He was moving through the station now, hunting down the remaining aliens one by one. Without their technology, they were helpless. Big and strong, but slow and clumsy in their dead armor. Target has disabled our systems, he heard over the alien comm channel. General Vexstar was still trying to coordinate his forces, but panic was spreading through the ranks. All units, fall back to the landing base. Prepare for evacuation. General, Jake called over the comm. Before you go, I want to make sure you understand what just happened here. Silence on the channel. You brought 200,000 of your finest warriors to kill one human. Jake continued, systematically hunting through the station's corridors. And not only did you fail, but you lost your entire fleet in the process. What do you think is going to happen when word of this gets out? More silence. Jake found a group of aliens trying to restart their shuttle manually. Primitive controls, no computer systems. They almost had it working when Jake arrived with his collection of functional weapons. The thing about humans, General, Jake said, stepping over the bodies, is that we don't know when to quit. We don't understand the concept of acceptable losses. And we really don't like it when people threaten our friends and families. He was moving toward the main docking bay now. Most of the surviving aliens would be there, trying to escape in whatever ships still had manual controls. Jake estimated maybe 300 survivors out of the original 200,000. Station to Katie, Jake called. I'm going to need pickup in about an hour, and bring some coffee. I'm running low. Jake, there are still hundreds of them left. Katie warned. Not for long, Jake replied. He reached the docking bay and looked out at the chaos. Alien ships were drifting powerless in space. The survivors were fighting over the few shuttles that could still operate without computer systems. Some were even trying to surrender, though Jake wasn't particularly interested in taking prisoners. General Vextar's personal shuttle was attempting to launch. The craft was struggling on manual controls, barely maintaining altitude. Jake picked up a rocket launcher from a dead alien and took careful aim. The shuttle exploded in a brilliant fireball. Jake watched the wreckage drift away and keyed his comm to the alien frequency one last time. This is Jake Morrison, he announced to any surviving aliens. I want you to take a message back to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that one human with a damaged rifle and scarred armor destroyed your entire fleet. He paused, looking out at the disabled alien ships floating helplessly in space. And tell them that Earth has 10 billion more, just like me. When Lieutenant Katie Sullivan's rescue ship arrived 6 hours later, they found Jake Morrison sitting in the station's command center. He was drinking coffee from a dented metal mug and reading a book, as if he hadn't just single-handedly defeated the largest alien assault force in galactic history. How was your day? Katie asked, settling into the co-pilot's chair. Educational, Jake replied, not looking up from his book. The Zephyrians learned something important about human military doctrine, which is. Jake smiled and took another sip of coffee. Never corner something meaner than you are. 3 weeks later, General Vextar's final report reached the Zephyrian High Command. The message was brief and to the point. Human military capabilities had been severely underestimated. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostile activities against human-controlled territories. Personal note. Jake Morrison sends his regards and asks if we would like to try for 97 hits on his new armor. The report included footage from the battle, showing one human warrior systematically destroying an entire fleet. The High Command watched in silence as their most advanced military technology was turned into scrap metal by a single soldier with primitive weapons and an attitude problem. The Emperor himself made the final decision. Reclassify all human military personnel as extinction-level threats. Issue standing orders to avoid all human-occupied systems. And find out if this Morrison has any relatives we should know about. But Jake Morrison was already preparing for his next assignment. Somewhere in the galaxy, another alien empire was making plans to attack human colonies. Another group of enemies was about to learn why the phrase, "don't mess with humans," existed in over 400 alien languages. And Jake Morrison was looking forward to teaching them personally. His new armor, freshly manufactured and completely undamaged, was rated to take at least 200 direct hits before showing any wear. Jake was curious to see if anyone would be brave enough to test that rating. He hoped so. After all, he had a reputation to maintain.